Hello, my name is Whit Morris. I'm a retired extension agent with Virginia Cooperative Extension. And during this session today, we want to look at some updates for 2021 that you're going to see on your radar. And with that being said, we want to kind of take a look and bring you up to date. The main item that we want to take a look at today is the FDA's proposed rule for additional traceability records for and emphasize certain foods. This information was distributed or put out in September of 2020. It's part of their ongoing effort to continue to set up a basic food safety minimal food safety requirements for all growers, and this is one that was introduced this last fall, and it's still under comment. But there are several features in here, and you may have been hearing some of this. The key to it is I want to share with you what we know now based on this. You can see that it includes a lot of different information. There's some data elements that we want to look at that they're asking for, and there are also some information that we send on to whoever buys or purchases our product, and in this case they call it a first receiver. We're gonna talk about that a little bit. There's some key terms here that you'll be familiar with that I'll keep talking about. The food traceability list, critical tracking events, we'll talk about those a little bit, key data elements, key things that you need to keep in your records, and then who is a first receiver. We want to talk about that a little bit today also. First of all, we want to look at and talk about the food traceability list that they have introduced, and you will see it in the handout that you have for these packages from this afternoon. You will see a food traceability list. It says Table 1 in this food and drug handout that you have with you today. These were things that they determined, FDA determined, based on ranking certain foods with certain types of foodborne illnesses and infections, bacteria, and so forth that are associated with these particular foods. For instance, E. coli in leafy greens, or listeria in cheeses, and so forth. The key to it is what they've done these based on some of the occurrences and the recalls and the issues that they've had during the last several years, and they've ranked them in here. And so these on this food traceability list are things that they see on a recurring basis as things that happen, as far as things that need the most emphasis as far as traceability is concerned. Now, they use this, they put these results together, and that's what you see in the list. As we take a look at this food traceability list, this table that you have in your handout there, a couple of things to be aware of. We as growers, as commercial growers, we are dealing with what we consider and call raw agricultural commodities, RAWs or RACs. You have dealt with these before, but basically all of our production deals with raw commodities, those that have a minimal amount of processing, and that's basically the only thing that we do in ours is to harvest. We may do some slight trimming to prepare during grading and in our boxing and so forth. So with that being said, the red arrows over here are those things, those items that if you're a commercial grower, you may be growing some of these items right here. And with that being said, those are items that are on our proposed food traceability list from FDA, and these are ones that we definitely are going to be asked to do traceability on. All of these that are in red. Now, if you look down at the one in yellow or orange on your screen, the orange arrow points to, and it says fruits and vegetables fresh cut. But I did some checking with our FSMA folks, and basically what they're talking about are things that continue to be processed and they're cut to meet market requirements. And just to give you an example there, lettuce that is chopped or mixed with other varieties to make a finished product is not considered a raw agricultural commodity. Sliced apples would be another example. If you slice and package apples, that is processing beyond the raw agricultural commodity designation. So though that does not apply to us as commercial growers unless you, of course, are doing these. This is going to apply to a different type of operation where finished product comes to them and they continue to work with it and prepare it further. Now, one last thing to remember about this list, if any of these are included as ingredients in other products, then you have to, those processors have to continue this traceability on within those products. So let's look at critical tracking events. That was one of the terms that we mentioned when we started this presentation. There are actually 5 of these. I'm showing you 3 here, and then there'll be 3 on the next slide, and they include growing, receiving, creating, transforming, and shipping. And you'll see the other 2 on the next slide. But as we take a look at these, the growing event and receiving event are events that happen on our farms. These are things that can happen on our farm. And so with that being said, these events, there are certain things, certain key items that we have to track as far as when we do these particular operations on our farm. So growing is one, receiving is another, and again, the other one that applies to us as growers, you're going to see on the next slide, is the shipping event. And here you see the last one that applies to us as commercial growers, shipping, and that's when you are preparing product, finished product for shipping, and it deals with your transportation issues and your trucking, your refrigeration, and so forth. And it also will bring in the idea of a first receiver, which we'll talk about in another slide. Now, as we look at each of these critical tracking events, and first of all, we're going to look at growing. And in the growing tracking event, there are key data elements, key things that they want you to make sure that you have access to and that you are recording as you go along. Now, as far as we're concerned as commercial growers, our main one are, and as they listed here, they call it growing coordinates. If you remember when we do our book, our manual, there is a written section on demographics, and it asks you for your coordinates, your GPS coordinates of your farm, and you have listed that back in section 102 of your manual. And then also, with that being said, within that farm GPS coordinate, you have, when you do traceability, you have listed field codes, and those fields and your farm map show exactly where these items are being grown or produced. And as far as growing, if you're a commercial grower, that is the main thing that you have to do. You're going to see when you go over to document 5.03, which we talked about earlier in traceability, we have updated that document so that your inspectors will know exactly where this information is located in your manual. So you're going to see some red print in there that's going to help describe where this is located. Now, while we're talking about this, one other thing, just remember, if you're a sprout grower, sprouts are considered a higher risk, and there are additional KDEs for sprout growers. And so if you grow sprouts, you're going to have some additional work and data to keep account of as far as traceability are concerned. Growers must also keep and send shipping information and additional items for your farms, and we're going to talk about that under shipping here in a little bit. When we look at our KDEs or our key data elements under receiving, you're going to see several different ones listed or asked for here, and I can assure you and tell you that these have been accounted for when you learn to do and set up your lot numbers, and when you record on document 5.05 when you do your production disposition reports for your commodities. All of these things are included in that report and in your lot numbers. Also, just to kind of note here, as you're doing these and you're preparing invoices and so forth, one of the things that you may want to look at on invoices and make sure that you have a numbered invoice. They're gonna be asking for that at some point in time also. So numbered invoices, and then you also already have a date on there. And then also on that invoice, if you're using a third-party transporter to transport your product from your farm to your grower, you need to note that on your invoice. So you need to have a place for that also. You'll see this in a little bit when we look at a sample invoice. Our third part for commercial growers that you're going to be looking at, key data elements are required under shipping. And I can assure you here and tell you that if you have been setting up a system along with us and learned the one that we talked about earlier in our discussion today, a lot of these key data elements are already accounted for. You've already got them in your system, so you don't have to go and add other materials to that. You're again going back. If you've done what we've talked about and taught, document 505, which is our production disposition report, and our invoices that have both of them have lot numbers that tie all of this traceability information together, and you have that in your documentation if you've been doing this. The only thing to note here again on an invoice that we're going to see, and I remind you one more time, one of the items they ask for is a transporter name. If you do not ship yourself or your buyer does not pick up, if you use a third party, you've got to note that person again on your invoice. Now let's take a look briefly at what they're talking about when they talk about the term first receiver. A first receiver means the first person other than a farm who purchases and takes physical possession of a food on the food traceability list that has been grown, raised, caught, or in the case of a non-produce commodity, harvested. So whoever in your situation, whoever is the first person to take that product away from your farm will become pretty much your first receiver. And so just to kind of go back, this is the definition, but we're going to see this arise a little bit more later, and I've got you some examples of it. Here's one first receiver example, and this happens to be in fresh cut romaine. If you're a grower of this particular crop or commodity that's on your farm, you probably have your coolers on the farm. And you also are the person who's doing all of the grading and processing and washing and so forth. So your first receiver will be when it transfers to a processor or a buyer or a customer, that person becomes your first receiver. Whoever takes it from your farm will be the first receiver. Another example that I can show you, it deals with cantaloupe. Cantaloupe will be grown on your farm. They will be harvested, and any washing or storage or cooling will be done at your farm if it is done at your farm. But as soon as that product again leaves your farm and it goes into the distributor or a customer or a buyer of any type, then they become the first receiver. And that's what they're talking about when they use this example. We've always known it as our customer or our buyer, their definition is first receiver. Okay, some of these sheets you saw from previous trainings, and you know this is part of our traceability system. And what we've done, we went ahead and put in the explanation to satisfy FDA as far as this additional traceability information. And with that being said, basically it says that we've got everything numbered. These include numbers for products that are either on their traceability list, their required list, or it also has all of our crops that we grow on the farm. So basically what you're doing now is exactly what you continue to do. You have a crop, you assign it a number, and we've learned how to do that earlier today. So you assign it that number, and that continues on business as usual. No changes there. I have just added information so that your inspector, when they come, will see this information and know that you're aware of it. On your traceback field codes, on your field numbers, I added this description up there so that they will know that these are the areas that you grow product on your farm's managed premises. And again, this is all explained in one of our SOPs, 2.16. And if they want to know how we set it up and do it, you have it in your manual, exactly how we set up lot numbers, how we designate these things. So these now are part of a critical tracking event, and you know what? We have already done them, and we have been practicing and doing them for several years. So our process of traceability does not have to change here. This production disposition report is probably the one that you'll see more red on spread out through it than any of the other forms. But basically what it does, again, it explains how we come up with this, where these records originate from. These are things, and again, when we start talking about key data elements, you'll see here I went ahead and listed KDEs, and you can see everything that you're already doing is a KDE, and this one down here, basically you'll see that these are the exact same things that you've been doing all along. So you've got your KDEs listed here, and this for growers who have been practicing this over the years, you do not have to change a thing. You've got it, but this does show you some of the items that you will need to account for this new traceability on certain items that FDA wants you to. So if you've been doing it with us for the last several years, it's business as usual. Let's take a look just a minute at an invoice, and if you'll see our invoice here, you have information up here. You have your farm's information, you have your customer or designation, whoever is taking this product from your farm or purchasing or whatever, and look right here, that's a KDE, and this happens to be the person here is your first receiver. So you're still doing the exact same thing. They have just given it a different definition or description. When you list on it, just like you always have, numbers of units, and then you've got a lot number. These are KDEs that you already have been doing, and nothing changes there. Probably the only one that has a major change, actually there would be two. One of them is make sure that you have a numbered invoice, and also make sure that if you transport by a third-party transporter, then you have that transporter listed here, who it went to, who picked it up. Okay, other than that, your invoices continue to be just like they always have. Not a lot of changes there. Now, just like with other items under FSMA, you have a exemption for certain farms, depending on their dollar volume of sales. No different here. There are some exemptions for those farms, and I have included that handout. We're not going to go through all of it today, but I can tell you this, I remind you of this. Doesn't matter if you're doing $200 or $200,000 and around this 25,000 threshold. If you're under it and you're exempt, if you still want to sell commercially, wholesale, you're going to have to be GAP certified, and you're going to need to use a traceability system for your products. If you do $2,000 worth of pumpkins and that's all you do all year, you're going to have a traceability system set up. And in that case, if you're doing it wholesale, your buyers are going to require you to be certified. There are probably some other exemptions. I remind you right here, again, we're dealing with raw agricultural commodities. We're not dealing, in the majority of our growers, we're not dealing with a minimally processed item. So with that being said, just remember again where we are. Don't let anybody try to convince you. If you're a commercial grower, don't let them convince you that you're doing processing. You're not a processor, okay? And you have that handout for further information if you need it for the exemption. One last thing that I do want to share with you is that there may be, and they list it as additional requirements, but if you are keeping your records, you can see here that records are to be maintained as either original paper records, electronic records, or true copies. They all must be legible and stored to prevent deterioration or loss. You know about the storage and keeping your records and so forth. Now, FDA, if you have a recall or for whatever reason, if they ask you to provide those records, you need to be able to provide them within no later than 24 hours after a request is made. That being said, they're looking at some point in time to have an electronic sortable spreadsheet containing relevant traceability information. Now, here's the deal. If you're keeping your traceability records electronically, make sure that your program or your app can produce your data in the form requested within the 24-hour time frame. The thing about it is there are a lot of these apps out there that are on your phones or in your computers or tablets or whatever, and they're all well and good. Just check with your program and your supplier or your person who you purchased it from to make sure that you can generate these reports. A lot of the software developers are charging extra for this little feature, and you don't know it until you go to pull it out, and there you have it. Everything's on the screen, but nothing can be generated electronically. No spreadsheets or any other reports can be generated. So make sure that you can come up with a hard copy if you're requested to do so. Now, to kind of close this thing down and everything, I just want to tell you that your take-home message is a good one today. If you're already GAP or HGAP certified, or you're working toward it, you have your traceability system in place, there's very few adjustments to your existing system to satisfy these new proposed FSMA rules for traceability. And that's a good thing. We've got plenty to do already. To know that we've already got this and have been practicing and doing it is a good thing. If you're developing your own, or if you've done a hybrid system, then you may be able to use this information that I've shared with you today to check your existing system to make sure it has those points that FDA is asking for. This concludes the updates that I wanted to share with you today. If you have any questions, you are welcome to contact us through our email, or you can contact me through the website that I've given you earlier today. That's available, and there's a way to send me a message there. We'll try to answer any questions that we can if you have them after this meeting today. Thank you. Hope everything goes well, and have a safe trip home.